I like that. I'm really interested to hear the other side of this, where the Columbus Crew were in the same playoff series.
Yes. On the other side of the conference, this was back when Chicago was in the Western Conference, even though nowadays Columbus and Chicago are obviously in the East. During this time, Columbus were also trying to do what Chicago was able to accomplish. As Andrew just mentioned, though, obviously we were not able to get to the point, but I will still tell you about their playoff run, which includes the final game at Ohio Stadium for the Columbus Crew. So, 1998 MLS Cup playoffs. The Columbus Crew are ready to make their third attempt at winning MLS Cup and are preparing for their final games at Ohio Stadium. But before we get into that, how did we get here? 1998 season for the Crew was honestly nothing special, except for one man. The team finished in fourth in the standings despite a losing record of 15 wins and 17 losses, giving them 45 points. The Galaxy were the Supporter Shield winners that season with 60 points, um, and they won it by a pretty wide mark. If you remembered, if you remember, I mentioned there was one man for Columbus that did have quite the special year this year, and that would be forward Stern John. His time in MLS was short, but very explosive. And this season, his first of two MLS, he finished with 26 goals, only one of which was a penalty. His top goal scorer by 7 goals in the league. So, some other notable mentions about some Crew players before diving into the playoffs. Brian McBride actually won goal of the year this year with a very nice scissor kick goal. And Thomas Dooley of the Columbus Crew won the Fair Play Award. And while this one isn't Columbus Crew specific, a certain someone was just bursting onto the scene this year, winning Rookie of the Year. And that someone is DP Pod legend Ben Olsen. All right, let's dive into playoff time now. Let's not get off. Let's not go on a tangent. So the grid was set. Columbus had the 2 seed in the Eastern Conference, which matched them up again. Everyone's favorite Metro Stars. The playoff series at this point was still the 3 series until the MLS Cup final. So the Metro Stars were led a dangerous attacking duo of Gio Savarese, yes, that Gio Savarese, and Eric Hurtado, previously of the LA Galaxy. The first game would show that both of these teams were bolstering super dangerous attacks, as the game would finish 5-3 in favor of Columbus. Goals for Columbus came from Jason Farrell, Stern John, Rob Smith, and 2 from Brian McBride, with 3 assists coming from Ansel Elcock. While the Crew's defense did concede 3 goals, it did do a good job of keeping Savarese from getting involved, as he was subbed off with no goals or assists in this game. The Metro Stars goal scorers this game were Hurtado, Miles Joseph, and Mike Sorber. Game 2 was played at Giant Stadium, where the Metro Stars looked to send it to a decisive Game 3. The game would end in regular time 1-1, with Tab Ramos, the scorer for the Metro Stars, and Stern John, the scorer for the Crew. That meant penalties. And in that so Metro fashion, the Metro Stars would lose after they missed 3 of their 5 penalties. Columbus was on to the conference finals, but the opponent was not going to be easy. As we've discussed in the past, and as many MLS historians will know, the early days of MLS were marked by multiple DC United MLS Cup wins. They had a dynasty during this time. Well, the Crew were up against them with a shot at the MLS Cup final. This was a DC United team that won 24 games this season, 7 of which were in shootouts, and was not going to make it easy for the Crew. And game 1 was evidence of this. DC would win this game 2-0 after goals from Tony Sane and Marco Echeverri. Now, if you remember, I mentioned that there would be a final game at Ohio Stadium for the Crew. This next game was it. One way or another, this was the final game at Ohio Stadium. What better way to keep your playoff hopes alive while simultaneously giving a fairy tale ending to Ohio Stadium than by getting a win? And a win they got. They defeated DC 4-2 with goals coming from Thomas Dooley, Stern John, and 2 more from Brian McBride. while DC scorers were Tony Sane and Roy Lassiter. This meant that everything came down to the decisive game 3. It was not going to be easy for the Crew to take this, especially considering they would have to do it in RFK Stadium. Unfortunately, it was not meant to be. DC were simply the better team on the day and went to the final with a 3-0 win over the Crew. Goals in this game came from Jeff Agus and 2 from Roy Lassiter. And as Andrew covered, DC faced Chicago in the final and would ultimately lose 2-0 to crown Chicago MLS Cup champions for 1998. So while the Crew did not get the fairy tale ending, Ohio Stadium that they probably would have liked, winning MLS Cup in 1998, they were at least able to end it on a victory.
Just had to throw the Metro in there, didn't you?
Of course, I had to. Any chance I get to throw that summer moment in there, I'm throwing it in.
Pretty dirty, not gonna
What
lie.
I what I didn't what I didn't realize though, so when I was originally looking at it, I saw 3 missed penalties from Metro Stars, and I was like, wow, that's terrible. Like, how did they miss 3 of their 5 penalties? I forgot that it's MLS style penalties, which from what I gathered, looking at other penalty shootouts in the playoff, were much harder to score because teams were missing them like crazy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So missing 3 out of 5 wasn't too out of place, honestly.
Nope. I get that. Like I said, that's par for the course if you look all the way back through it, right?
Yep.
Unless you've got anything to add, I think that's where we end it.
Yeah, that's all I got.